The morning sun rose slowly over the quiet beach, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. The waves rolled in gently, and the sound of seagulls filled the air. A man stood near the shore, watching the water like he always did. His name was Daniel, a single father who worked hard to give his little girl the best life he could. He wasn't rich or famous. He didn't own much except for his small apartment near town and an old car that rattled every time he started it. But he had something more precious, his daughter, Lily. She was only 7, full of energy and laughter, and she was the reason he woke up every day with purpose. Daniel worked 2 jobs, one as a part-time mechanic and another as a lifeguard at the same beach he was standing on now. He didn't mind the hard work. It kept food on the table, and more importantly, it gave him time to spend with Lily when she wasn't in school. On this particular morning, he had the day off from the garage. He had promised Lily a beach day, and she couldn't be more excited. Lily ran ahead of him barefoot, her small feet leaving prints in the cool sand. She carried a bright yellow bucket and a little shovel. "Daddy, let's make the biggest sandcastle ever," she shouted with a grin that could melt anyone's heart. Daniel smiled and followed her, carrying a small cooler and a towel. "All right, but you're the boss today," he said, teasing her. She laughed and twirled in the sand, her brown curls bouncing as the breeze played with them. "Then I say we need ice cream later." He laughed softly. "You drive a hard bargain, kiddo. Deal." For a while, they built their sandcastle together, a messy pile of towers, seashells, and imagination. Other families dotted the beach, and laughter mixed with the sound of the ocean. It was one of those rare, peaceful days when life felt light. But peace doesn't always last long. As Daniel stood to shake the sand off his hands, his eyes drifted toward the water, a habit he had developed after years of watching the sea. Something caught his attention, a woman about 50 yards away, floating oddly still near the shallow waves. At first, he thought she was just relaxing, but something didn't look right. Her arm drifted limply, and her body seemed to roll with the tide instead of moving against it. His instincts kicked in before his mind even caught up. "Lily, stay right here," he called out, already running toward the water. The closer he got, the clearer it became why she wasn't moving. He dove into the water and reached her within seconds. The woman's face was pale, her eyes closed, her lips slightly blue. "Hey, can you hear me?" he shouted, lifting her head above the water. There was no response. His heart started pounding, but he didn't hesitate. With steady arms, he pulled her back to shore while calling out for help. A few people nearby noticed and rushed over. Daniel laid the woman flat on the sand and checked for breathing. Nothing. Without wasting a second, he began CPR, firm rhythmic compressions followed by breaths, keeping his focus sharp and his voice calm even as panic buzzed in the air around him. "Come on, breathe," he muttered, his voice shaking slightly. "Don't you give up." Lily stood a few feet away, clutching her yellow bucket, eyes wide with fear. A kind older woman hugged her shoulders, whispering that her daddy was a hero and that everything would be okay. The waves kept washing close, touching the woman's feet. As Daniel pressed on, 1, 2, 3, breathe. 1, 2, 3, breathe. The sound of people murmuring grew louder. Time felt like it stopped, and then it happened. The woman gasped suddenly, coughing up seawater. Daniel quickly turned her to her side so she could breathe properly. A collective sigh of relief spread across the small crowd. "Easy, you're okay," he said softly, his hand on her back. "You're safe now." The woman blinked weakly, disoriented. Her lips trembled, and she tried to speak but couldn't form words yet. Daniel stayed by her side, reassuring her in a calm, steady voice until the lifeguards and paramedics arrived. As they lifted her onto a stretcher, the woman reached for his hand weakly. Their eyes met for a brief moment, hers full of confusion and gratitude, his calm but distant. "You're going to be fine," he said quietly. "Just breathe." She managed a faint nod before the paramedics carried her away. Daniel watched the ambulance drive off, still catching his own breath. When he turned back, Lily ran into his arms. "Daddy, is she okay?" He hugged her tightly. "She's going to be fine. You were so brave for staying where I told you." The crowd slowly dispersed, but a few people patted Daniel on the shoulder, thanking him for what he did. He only smiled politely, brushing off the praise. To him, it wasn't about being a hero. It was simply the right thing to do. Later, as the afternoon sun glowed golden, Daniel and Lily sat together on their towel. Lily leaned her head against his arm. "Daddy, you save people all the time." He smiled softly. Sometimes. It's part of my job. But you didn't even know her, she said innocently. He looked out at the ocean, thoughtful. You don't have to know someone to care if they live, he said. Lily didn't completely understand, but she nodded anyway. I think she'll say thank you when she gets better. Daniel chuckled quietly. Maybe she will. But even if she doesn't, that's okay. After they packed up and left the beach, the day ended like any other. Dinner at home, bedtime stories, and the usual struggle to convince Lily to sleep. But Daniel's mind wandered back to the woman. He couldn't shake the image of her face when she gasped for breath. Something about it stuck with him. Not because of recognition, but because of the fragile line between life and death he had witnessed again. Meanwhile, across town, in a quiet private hospital suite, the same woman woke up surrounded by doctors. Her assistant stood nearby, relief washing over his face. Miss Elena, you're awake, he said softly. Elena blinked, trying to remember what happened. Her head hurt and her throat felt sore. The beach, she whispered. I remember. I was swimming and then you passed out in the water, her assistant said. They said a man pulled you out and gave you CPR. You're very lucky. The doctor said if he hadn't acted so quickly. He didn't finish the sentence. Elena looked away, her mind replaying faint flashes. The man's voice, his steady hands, the feeling of air returning to her lungs. She didn't even know his name. For someone like her, a billionaire businesswoman who had everything money could buy, it was a strange, humbling feeling to realize her life had been saved by a stranger. She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of it. All her life she had been surrounded by people who wanted something from her. Money, power, attention. But this man, he didn't even stay to be thanked. A few days passed. Daniel returned to his regular routine. Between work shifts, Lily's school, and household chores, life went on. But every now and then, when he looked at the ocean, he wondered if the woman had recovered. He didn't know her name, where she came from, or what had caused her to collapse. He only knew she was alive, and that was enough for him. One evening, as he closed up his lifeguard post, the sunset painted the sky orange and red. Lily was collecting seashells nearby when a shadow fell over the sand beside him. Excuse me, a gentle voice said. Daniel turned and froze. Standing a few feet away was the woman from that day, dressed simply in white, her long hair moving with the wind. Her face looked much healthier now, but her eyes still held that soft, deep emotion. He remembered you, he said quietly, almost surprised she was real and standing in front of him again. I was looking for you, she said, a small smile tugging at her lips. They told me your name was Daniel. He nodded, unsure what to say. I wanted to thank you, she continued, stepping closer. For saving my life. He gave a modest shrug, just doing what needed to be done. Her smile grew faint. Most people wouldn't have done it so calmly. Daniel looked out at the water instead of her eyes. I've seen the sea take people before. I wasn't going to let it happen again. Elena studied him quietly. He spoke with the calmness of someone who had been through more than he showed. There was strength in his eyes, not the kind that came from money or position, but from surviving, from protecting, from living for something beyond himself. Lily ran up then, waving her bucket. Daddy, look, I found a pink shell. Elena knelt down instinctively. That's beautiful, she said warmly. Lily smiled shyly, hiding behind Daniel's leg. This is your daughter? Elena asked softly. Yeah, he said, pride lighting up his face. My whole world. Elena looked at them, the father and daughter who had so little yet seemed to have everything that truly mattered. Something stirred inside her, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. Something far more genuine than the life she knew, surrounded by business meetings and luxury. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they stood there, three souls connected by something far beyond coincidence. Daniel didn't know who she really was, and she didn't plan on telling him, not yet. For now, she just wanted to know the man who had saved her, not because of what she owned, but because of who he was. And somewhere deep down, a quiet truth began to bloom. A story neither of them could have predicted, one that would soon change both their lives forever. The next few days passed quietly, but something inside Elena had changed. The moment she opened her eyes in the hospital and remembered Daniel's calm voice telling her to breathe, She couldn't forget it. It wasn't just about being saved. It was the way he looked. At her, like she was simply a person who needed help, not someone to impress or please. That feeling was new to her, almost comforting. Elena had lived a life surrounded by power and wealth for years. Every morning her assistants brought her files to sign, schedules to follow, and meetings that never seemed to end. She had private jets, mansions, and a staff that called her ma'am in rehearsed tones. Yet in all that comfort she often felt alone, like she was just a name on a company building, not a human being anymore. Now, sitting by her window, she thought about the man who saved her. He didn't even ask for her name. He didn't ask for a reward or a photo. He had just walked away once she was safe. She found that hard to forget. "Do we know who he is?" she asked her assistant one morning. "Yes, ma'am," he said. The hospital report had his name. He works as a lifeguard at the public beach. Also part-time mechanic. Elena looked thoughtful for a moment. "He has a daughter, doesn't he?" The assistant nodded. "Yes, a little girl." "Good," she said quietly. "Prepare the car. I want to go to the beach." Her assistant hesitated. "Today, ma'am." "You still need rest?" "I'm fine," she interrupted softly. "I just want to thank him properly." Later that afternoon, the ocean breeze greeted her again. She wore simple clothes this time, jeans, a white shirt, and sandals. Her hair was tied back, and there were no bodyguards or expensive cars parked nearby. She wanted to go unnoticed, to blend in just like any other person. Daniel was on duty that day. He stood near the lifeguard chair, his shirt slightly damp from the sea spray, scanning the water like always. When he saw her walking toward him, he blinked, surprised. "You're here," he said after a moment. "Yes," she replied with a small smile. "I hope I'm not interrupting your work." "Not really," he said, wiping his hands on a towel. "How are you feeling?" "Better," she said softly. "All thanks to you." He shook his head. "You don't have to thank me. You just got unlucky out there." She tilted her head slightly. "Still, I owe you my life." I wanted to say that in person. For a moment, silence hung between them. The sound of the waves filled the air, and somewhere behind them, children laughed. She could see how his eyes softened when he smiled, not out of charm but sincerity. "Well, I'm glad you're okay," he said. "Just stay out of deep water for a while." Elena chuckled. "I'll keep that in mind." She looked around. "Is your daughter here today?" "She's in school," he replied. "It's just me right now." Elena nodded slowly. "She's lovely. She told me about her sandcastle the day it happened." Daniel's face lit up. "Yeah, she loves building those. Everyone looks the same, but she says each one has a new story." Elena smiled gently. "Children have the most beautiful way of seeing life." They talked for a few more minutes, about the weather, about the ocean, about simple things that didn't involve money or titles. For Elena, it was refreshing. No one had spoken to her like this in a long time. When she left that day, Daniel thought that would be the end of it. But it wasn't. She started coming back. Not every day, but often enough that he noticed. Sometimes she brought sandwiches for Lily. Other times she'd bring a book and sit near the water, reading quietly while Lily played nearby. It became a routine none of them spoke about, but all of them enjoyed. One afternoon, Lily ran up to her holding a seashell. "Miss Elena, look, this one has a heart on it." Elena crouched down to see. "Oh, it does." "You should keep that one. Maybe it's lucky." "Daddy says luck doesn't come from shells," Lily said, giggling. "He says it comes from hard work." Elena laughed softly. "He sounds like a smart man." Daniel, who was nearby, heard and smiled. "Don't let her trick you," he said. "She's collecting enough shells to start a store." Lily grinned proudly. "A shell store would be awesome." Elena joined their laughter. It was simple, warm, and so unlike the world she usually lived in. With Daniel and Lily, she didn't have to be careful about her words. She didn't have to hide behind business talk or polite smiles. After a while, she started helping them build sandcastles. She even brought small plastic molds and colorful flags one day. "For your castle," she told Lily. "Every queen needs her flags." "And her knights," Daniel added, digging a moat with his hands. Elena glanced at him playfully. "And who are you then?" "Just the builder," he said with a grin. It was moments like this that made her forget the weight of her name. Out here, she was just Elena, not the woman with companies, meetings, or headlines. She was someone who laughed with a little girl and talked with a man who didn't treat her like she was special. But as much as she loved these peaceful days, part of her knew she was living a small lie. She hadn't told Daniel who she really was. She didn't plan it that way at first. She simply wanted to thank him. But the more time she spent with him, the harder it became to tell the truth. She was afraid that once he knew, everything would change. At night, when she returned to her large, quiet home, her assistant would remind her of meetings she missed or papers she hadn't signed. "Ma'am, the board is asking questions," he said one evening. "They're worried about your absence." "I'll handle it," she said quickly. "Tell them I needed personal time." "Personal time?" he repeated, almost surprised. "That's new." Elena sighed, looking out the window toward the distant lights of the city. "Yes, it is." Meanwhile, Daniel had his own thoughts. Every time Elena left the beach, he wondered why she came back so often. She didn't seem like someone from around there. Her clothes were simple but well-made, her manners refined. She carried herself with quiet confidence, but there was kindness in her eyes. He tried not to think too much about it. Maybe she just liked the peace of the ocean, he told himself. Maybe she was just lonely. One evening, as the sun was setting, she sat beside him on the sand while Lily collected shells nearby. The air was calm, golden light shimmering on the water. "You really love this place, don't you?" she said. "I do," he replied. "The sea's honest. It gives and takes, but it never pretends to be something it's not." She looked at him quietly. "That's a beautiful way to put it," he smiled faintly. "It's the only place I feel free, I guess. Out here, nobody cares who you are, just whether you can swim." She laughed softly, but her heart ached a little at his words. If only he knew who she really was. That her world was nothing like this one. When Lily came running back, holding a starfish she had found, Elena took a photo of her smiling face. It was rare for her to take pictures that weren't for magazines or business. This one felt real, precious. As the days went on, Elena started bringing small gifts. Not expensive ones, just thoughtful things. One day it was a kite for Lily. Another time it was a homemade lunch she said she cooked herself. Daniel noticed, of course. "You don't have to do all this," he said gently one afternoon. "I know," she replied. "But I want to." He hesitated, unsure how to respond. Part of him wanted to ask why she was really here, but the look in her eyes stopped him. It wasn't pity or guilt. It was something softer. Then one afternoon, while they were all laughing by the water, someone called Elena's name from behind. It was a man in a black suit rushing toward her. "Ma'am, you shouldn't be here," he said, clearly panicked. "The investors' meeting." Elena froze, realizing what had just happened. Daniel looked confused. The man continued. "Your car is waiting and the security team—" "Enough," Elena said quickly, her tone firm. "I'll be there later." The man looked at her apologetically and left, but the damage was already done. Daniel's expression had changed. "Investors?" he asked quietly. "Security team?" Elena opened her mouth but couldn't find the right words. "Daniel, I can explain." He raised his hand slightly. "You don't have to. It's none of my business." She could hear the disappointment in his voice, even though he was trying to sound calm. Lily looked up, confused. "What's wrong?" Daniel smiled at her gently. "Nothing, sweetheart. It's getting late. Let's pack up." Elena stood there, watching them walk away slowly, her heart sinking with every step they took. She wanted to run after him, to tell him the truth, that she hadn't meant to hide anything, that she just wanted to be seen for who she really was. But she didn't. She just stood there, her feet buried in the sand, watching the waves roll in and out. That night, she sat alone in her room, staring at the photo of Lily smiling with the starfish. She felt something she hadn't felt in years, and regret. Real, deep regret. In her world, money could fix almost anything. But she knew this time, it couldn't fix what was broken between her and Daniel. Days passed after that awkward afternoon on the beach, and neither Daniel nor Lily saw Elena again. The ocean still roared like always, but something about the days felt different, quieter, heavier. Lily asked about her often. "Daddy, where's Miss Elena?" "Did she go home?" Daniel would force a small smile. "Maybe. She's probably busy." But deep down he wasn't sure how to answer. He didn't really know who she was anymore. That man in the suit, the mention of investors and security, it didn't make sense. He thought she was just a regular woman who liked the beach. He thought she was like them. Simple, kind, honest. He tried not to think about it, but at night, when Lily was asleep, He'd sit by the window, staring at the ocean lights in the distance. He wondered if she'd come back to explain or if that chapter of his life was already closed. Meanwhile, across the city, Elena sat behind her desk, staring at the paper she hadn't touched in hours. Her assistant spoke, but his voice barely reached her. She knew. Dead without listening, her mind was at the beach, the sound of the waves, Lily's laughter, and the look in Daniel's eyes when he realized who she was. For the first time in years, she felt small, not in a bad way, but in a way that made her remember she was human. She had built walls around her life so high that no one could reach her, but Daniel had climbed them without even knowing, and now she had pushed him away by not being honest. That night, she stood on her balcony, the city lights shining beneath her. The same thought kept coming back. She needed to see him again, even if it meant facing his disappointment. A few days later, Daniel was fixing a boat engine near the docks when he saw a familiar car pull up. The door opened and Elena stepped out. Simple clothes again, hair loose, no guards this time. She walked toward him slowly, unsure if he'd even want to talk. He looked up briefly, then focused back on the engine. "You found the wrong beach," he said quietly, wiping grease off his hands. She hesitated. "I just wanted to talk." "There's not much to say," he replied, still not looking at her. "I know I should have told you who I was," she said softly. "I didn't plan to hide it. I just wanted to spend time without people treating me differently." Daniel finally looked up, his expression calm but distant. "You think I would have treated you differently?" She took a deep breath. "Most people do." "I'm not most people," he said simply. There was a pause, long, heavy, filled with all the unspoken things between them. Elena stepped closer. "You saved my life, Daniel. And after that, I wanted to know you. Not as someone who owes you, but as someone who wanted to understand what makes a man like you so kind when the world isn't always kind back." He sighed. "Kindness doesn't come from money or power. It comes from choice, I know," she whispered. "That's why I liked being around you. You made me forget about everything else. You made me feel real." Daniel's eyes softened for a second, but he turned away again. "You had your reasons, but my daughter got attached to you. You became part of her world and then you disappeared." Elena's voice cracked slightly. "I didn't mean to hurt her. Or you, I know," he said. "But people like you live in a world far away from ours. You can't just walk in and out without leaving something behind." She swallowed hard. "Then let me make it right. Let me help you." He looked at her, almost hurt. "Help me? You think I need your money?" "That's not what I meant," she said quickly. "I didn't come here with a checkbook. I don't know. Maybe I just needed to say sorry." Daniel nodded slowly. "You've said it. That's enough." She could see there was no anger in his eyes, just quiet distance, the kind that hurt more than words ever could. Before leaving, she glanced toward the ocean. "Lily made me promise to teach her how to fly that kite next time," she said softly. "I guess there won't be a next time." Daniel didn't answer. When she finally walked away, he stood there for a long moment watching the car disappear. He felt something in his chest tighten. Not anger, not bitterness, just an emptiness he couldn't name. That night, Lily asked again, "Daddy, did Miss Elena come today?" He hesitated. "She stopped by, yeah." Lily's face lit up. "Really, when's she coming again?" Daniel looked down at her innocent eyes and smiled weakly. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe soon." But the truth was, he didn't know if he wanted her to. In the days that followed, Elena threw herself back into work, but nothing felt the same. The boardroom meetings, the high-rise office, the expensive dinners, they all felt empty. She'd look at the clock and wonder if Lily was building another sandcastle, or if Daniel was out there watching the sea. Her assistant noticed her distraction. "You've been somewhere else lately," he said gently. She smiled faintly. "Maybe I finally found somewhere I belonged and then lost it." One afternoon, as she left her office, she saw a small girl standing with flowers outside the building. For a second, she froze. The child looked so much like Lily it made her heart skip. But it wasn't her. It was a stranger. Still, it reminded her how much she missed that little smile, that innocent joy. That weekend, Elena decided to visit the beach again, though she wasn't sure she'd see Daniel there. She brought a small box of pastries, the kind Lily liked, and sat down near their usual spot. For a while, she just watched the ocean, hoping maybe they'd appear. Hours passed and the sky started turning orange, but they never came. When she finally stood to leave, she saw a small drawing in the sand near the lifeguard post, a shaky little heart with the letters L and E written inside. It made her eyes sting. She knelt down and touched it gently, whispering, "I miss you too, little one." She didn't know that Daniel had seen her from a distance. He was walking back from the docks holding Lily's hand. He stopped when he saw Elena sitting alone by the water. Lily noticed too. "Daddy, it's her." Daniel hesitated. "Yeah, I see her. Can we go say hi?" Lily asked eagerly. He wanted to say no, but the look in her eyes made it hard. "All right," he said softly. When Elena turned around and saw them walking toward her, she stood up, surprised. Lily ran ahead and hugged her legs. "Miss Elena, you came back." Elena knelt down, hugging her tightly. "Of course I did. I missed you." Daniel approached slowly. "We didn't expect to see you." "I didn't expect to see you either," she said, smiling faintly. Lily held both their hands, looking up. "Can we build one more castle?" They both glanced at each other, unsure, but neither wanted to disappoint her. So they sat down together just like old times. The air felt lighter somehow, like the ocean itself was relieved to have them back. As they built the sandcastle, Elena noticed Daniel's quiet gaze now and then. He wasn't as open as before, but there was still warmth there, hidden but not gone. When Lily ran off to find seashells, Elena said softly, "You were right. People like me do live far away from your world, but I don't want to anymore." Daniel looked at her, his voice steady. "You can't change who you are." "Maybe not," she said. "But I can choose who I want to be around. And I choose you too." He sighed, unsure what to say. "It's not that simple, Elena. You have a whole life built somewhere else." "I have a life, yes," she said. "But it doesn't feel like living." Her honesty caught him off guard. For a moment, he didn't know what to do with the silence between them. Then Lily came running back holding a shell. "This one's for you, Miss Elena." "It's shaped like a star." Elena smiled, taking it gently. "Thank you, sweetheart. I'll keep it forever." When the sun dipped below the horizon, they packed up and started to leave. Before getting into her car, Elena turned to Daniel. "I know I can't erase the way I handled things, but maybe I can make new moments that matter more." Daniel looked at her for a long time, then finally nodded. "Maybe." As she drove away, Lily looked up at her father. "So, does that mean she'll come again?" Daniel smiled faintly. "We'll see." That night, after Lily went to bed, he stood on the balcony again, looking out at the dark ocean. He thought about everything, the way she talked, the way she looked at him, the way she fit into their small, quiet life even when she didn't have to. He didn't know what would happen next. But for the first time, he didn't try to stop thinking about her. And somewhere across town, Elena sat by her window, holding the tiny star-shaped shell in her hand. For the first time in a long while, she smiled, not because of success or status, but because of hope. The next few weeks were strange for Daniel. The days seemed normal at first, working at the garage, keeping an eye on Lily, running errands. But there was always a thought tugging at the back of his mind. Elena had returned, and they had spent that afternoon together, rebuilding the connection, laughing like before. Yet there was something he couldn't shake off, the truth about who she was. He hadn't asked. She hadn't said. And somehow both of them had fallen into a quiet rhythm, as if pretending everything was normal could make it so. Lily, of course, didn't care about complicated truths. To her, Elena was fun, kind, and present. She ran to her every morning when she came to the beach, showed her drawings, collected shells, and laughed without caution. She even started calling her Auntie Elena, a title Elena accepted with a smile, though it made her heart ache with guilt and longing all at once. One sunny afternoon, Daniel and Lily arrived at the beach to find Elena already there, sitting on a towel with a small picnic laid out. She waved them over with a warm smile. "Hey, you two," she called. "I saved some sandwiches for you, Daniel. Don't worry, Lily, there's peanut butter just for you." Lily ran ahead excitedly. "Thank you, Auntie Elena." Daniel smiled faintly but didn't speak. He was still cautious, watching her carefully. As they sat down to eat, Elena chatted gently with Lily about school and hobbies, ignoring the awkwardness with Daniel. She wanted the afternoon to feel like it used to, before the suits, the investors, and the reminders of her world invaded her moments with them. "Daddy," Look at this shell, Lily shouted, holding up a spiraled pink shell. That's beautiful, kiddo, Daniel said, smiling genuinely this time. Elena leaned closer. Can I see? She held the shell in her hand for a moment, studying it. It's perfect. It looks like it belongs in a treasure chest, Lily beamed. It's mine! But you can look. Elena laughed softly, a sound Daniel hadn't heard in a long time. A sound free from pretense, money, and expectation. It made him look at her differently, as though he could see something real beneath her polite voice and carefully measured gestures. After a while, they laid out the picnic blanket and played small games with Lily. They built sand castles together, chased waves, and watched seagulls dive into the water. Elena was careful to stay in her place, letting Daniel handle Lily when she got wet or sandy. But she noticed the way he moved, the quiet strength, the natural confidence, and the tenderness he showed Lily. She felt drawn to it in ways she hadn't expected. As the afternoon faded, Elena hesitated. She wanted to tell him the truth, to reveal that she wasn't just a regular woman enjoying the beach. But she was afraid. She was afraid it would scare him, change the way he saw her, and take away the trust they had rebuilt. Daniel, she began softly, pausing. There's something I've been meaning to tell you. Something important. He looked at her carefully, sensing the weight of her words. Go on, he said quietly. She took a deep breath. I'm not exactly who I said I was. I didn't mean to hide it from you, I just wanted to be with you and Lily without everything else interfering. Daniel's brow furrowed slightly. Everything else? I run a company, she said carefully. A big one. I'm wealthy. I have a lot of responsibilities, a lot of people depending on me. That's why I came in the way I did and without showing any of that. I wanted to be seen as just me, not the money or the name. He was silent for a long moment, staring at the sand. His fingers absently traced a line in it. So all this time, you weren't just a woman coming to the beach? No, she said softly. I'm still me, Daniel. I'm still the same woman you met. The same woman who wanted to thank you, laugh with Lily, and just be. He let out a slow breath. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I was afraid, she admitted. I was afraid it would change everything. I didn't want you to see me differently. I wanted to be part of your world without the walls my life usually has. Daniel looked at her, studying her eyes. There was honesty there, but also fear, vulnerability. He saw someone who wasn't perfect, but someone real, someone who had risked a lot just to be human for a little while. Lily tugged at his hand. Daddy, can we build another castle? He glanced at her, then back at Elena. Yeah, we can. For the next hour, they worked on the castle together. Daniel and Elena took turns digging moats, placing seashells on towers, and making little flags out of leaves. Lily laughed and shouted with delight, running back and forth with her bucket. The castle grew bigger and more elaborate with every passing minute. As they worked, Daniel noticed how Elena's hands moved carefully, how she focused on the small details, and how she laughed without reservation when Lily made a funny comment. He realized that the woman in front of him, the one who carried a life far beyond the beach, was still capable of genuine warmth and joy. After the castle was finished, they stepped back to admire it. The sun was lower now, casting golden light across the sand. The waves lapped gently at the shore, and the sky was streaked with orange and pink. Elena looked at Daniel, her voice quiet. I know it might be hard for you to accept this, and I understand if you don't want anything to do with me anymore. I just needed you to know the truth. He studied her carefully. Elena, it doesn't change what I think about you. It doesn't change the fact that you saved my life and I'll never forget it. But you can't just drop into our lives and expect everything to stay the same. My world is simple, yours isn't. You have responsibilities I can't even imagine, she nodded. I know. I don't expect you to understand everything. But I want to try. I want to be there. Not for money or anything else, just for us. For Lily. For you. Daniel looked at Lily, who was busy decorating the castle with small pebbles. He realized that for his daughter, Elena was already a hero. She had shown kindness, patience, and genuine care. And for him, he couldn't deny that her presence had stirred something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, curiosity, maybe even something more. He let out a slow breath. All right, but we do this slowly, no rush, no pretending, just honesty from now on. Elena smiled, relief washing over her. I promise. Just honesty. They spent the rest of the evening walking along the shore, their conversation light and easy. They talked about their favorite memories of childhood, about little things that made them happy, and about the kind of future they hoped for, not defined by wealth or status, but by love and presence. As the sun disappeared behind the horizon, Daniel realized that he had been holding himself back, afraid of what someone like Elena could bring into their life. But standing there listening to her laugh with Lily, he felt a sense of calm. Maybe it was possible for two worlds to meet, even if they were very different. Elena, too, felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. She was used to control, to planning, to power, but here she was part of something organic and real, something she hadn't expected to find in the waves and sand. That night, they parted ways reluctantly, knowing the days ahead would be filled with questions, challenges, and adjustments. But for the first time, both of them were willing to face those challenges together. As Daniel tucked Lily into bed that night, she whispered, "Daddy, I like Miss Elena. Can she come visit tomorrow?" He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "We'll see, kiddo. We'll see." Across town, Elena placed a small photo of Lily holding the star-shaped shell on her desk. She whispered softly to herself, "I'll find a way to be part of their world, no matter what it takes." And though neither of them knew exactly what the future held, one thing was certain: the line between their two worlds was beginning to blur, and love had quietly started to take root. Continue generating.